Seeking the wise.
With Aaron and Alexander discussing the Just philosophy.
Covering self-development, emotional processing, conscious relationships, and 5 levels of overall wellness.
We talk a lot about energy leakage on this podcast, and maybe today we can bring in how do we actually right the ship and start charging our energy if we are constantly leaking our energy by not being conscious. And I think that's kind of the topic that I want to talk about here today. I'm Aaron. Along with me is Alexander.
Hello, everyone. So good to be here. This is going to be an interesting topic.
Yeah. So most of our episodes are about all the things that we're doing wrong. And I know wrong is one of those things where we're judging something, but if we are talking about consciousness, then all the unconscious things we're doing is a constant energy leakage. And our childhood trauma or any trauma that we've had in our lives, when we're going about our daily business, if something comes up and it triggers us, that also can create an energy leakage. Things that come in that worry us, bills, safety of ourselves or our family members. These are all things that are constantly kind of chewing at us in the background. And I know a lot of mine live in my subconscious where they're like constantly running. And sometimes maybe I don't even realize that they are existing because they're not in my active consciousness where I'm like actively thinking about them. But then every now and then I can just check in and I can feel something kind of like hanging on my shoulders, kind of weighing me down. And I can check in and be like, oh, there's that. I'm still worrying about that. So I know this is going to be a great conversation, and maybe it is more of a conversation than it is about what to do. We'll see as it goes. But I'm excited to have this conversation, Alexander. What would you maybe define as energy leakage if we're going to summarize all the podcasts that we've done thus far?
Well, we'll start with the negative emotions or so-called negative emotions and, really looking at family lineage and traits that we pick up mainly through our childhood. Like you were saying, a lot of this is stored in the subconscious. So some people are aware of these energy leakages and some people aren't because it's just their life and the way that they've always been. So part of self-development work or awakening or whatever you want to label, when you start seeing things aren't exactly the way you've been taught or the way that you've seen them in the past, and you start seeing things differently, this is one of the things that people notice right off the bat. I get so many people in my private practice that will talk about how they feel worse when they get into this work before they feel better. And that's because most people aren't being honest with themselves of all of the energy leakages, again, whether they're aware of it or not. And once you start being aware of that and really paying attention to the people, places, and things that drain your energy, including your own subconscious and your own views and perceptions of the world, it can be overwhelming. But that's part of we can call it a conscious detox, that you have to release a lot of these patterns to get to a point to create new, healthier patterns.
I guess it would be similar to that saying where whatever you focus on, you start seeing more of. So if you are suddenly interested in a yellow car, you start seeing yellow cars everywhere. So if we suddenly are going to start making it an intention to be more conscious and take responsibility for our emotions and take inventory on where our kind of negative mindsets or our leakages are happening, first we need to become aware of it, and then we need to make it a priority to do this. Mm-hmm. But I think once we start doing that, like you said, we start to realize everywhere where this is happening, and it can be overwhelming. And like you said, it can lead to us feeling worse, or maybe even as this stuff is coming out, we're acting out more because it's suddenly all of this trauma is hitting us, where before it was kind of like pushed down and we were keeping it at bay by not being conscious of it.
Right, suppressing. That's taught in our culture, to suppress pain, to suppress feelings, to suppress emotions. You got to keep going. You got to keep going is what, our society focuses that type of experience on people. Here on the podcast and in the Just Philosophy, that's a big part of our intention, is to redirect that energy. And I want to give just a basic meaning of energy leakage here, because we're using that term, but we're going to get into the full conversation of all 5 levels of the spiritual, the mental, the energetic, the emotional, and the physical. And so we're going to be touching base on possibly how to stop energy drainages and how to so-called charge those energy fields as well. So I did want to say that even though we are talking about energy leakage, we're actually talking about that on 5 different levels. And I wanted to give the most simple definition that I can think of at this time for energy leakage is anytime you are in resistance, you are leaking energy. And that's why the power of acceptance is talked about so much throughout this podcast, throughout the philosophy, because true acceptance, again, it doesn't mean condoning or approving of the situation or the person, the opinion, or anything. But see, you can hear a different opinion than yours and not be in resistance to it. That's called allowing and accepting that, hey, there's different views out here. I don't have to agree with something to be in harmony. And I think that hopefully that's one thing that if anyone gets nothing else from this podcast, just that simple thing to realize that you can have a different view from somebody and still not be in resistance to it. And the way to do that is through acceptance. And, it goes back to the second pillar of polarity versus duality, to realize that everything that's created has an opposite. So opposites have to exist. And that's where acceptance lives, is in the polarity view. And of course, duality is just that. It's in constant dualism because one is trying to correct the other. And that's a nonstop battle through all of time.
Some people may argue that why don't we just keep suppressing our emotions because it's less we have to put up with, because why allow all this stuff to come up and then it kind of makes your life worse in the short run because they're thinking short term. But if we are constantly living our lives just fine suppressing, then why would we change things up? But maybe talk about what that eventually leads to, because if we reduce this down to energy, like you were just saying, anytime we resist something, it's creating this energetic pushing down, suppressing of energy, I guess is what we're really calling it, because our emotions are energy. They need somewhere to go. So if we just keep suppressing it, it's like we're creating a bottle of soda and we're just shaking it and it's building that pressure, and it needs somewhere to go. So suppressing it, the energy has to go somewhere. It's going to go somewhere. It can't just physically dissipate on its own. It's going to go somewhere. So where would it go?
Yeah, the majority of the time it winds up turning into illness, unfortunately. And our society's becoming more and more aware of the term they use is stress, and how much stress really interferes with multiple layers of the body. And that stress is resistance. So part of self-development or working to gain more consciousness is that you want to stop that suppression, and you even want to consider going beyond that to release that has been suppressed. And the Just Philosophy, has multiple ways to approach that. And we've talked on multiple episodes here on the Wise that the emotion worry is in the abdomen, the stomach area. And it's also connected to the second chakra and our creative and our sexual energy. So see, if a person doesn't have a healthy sex life and they don't have a creative life, then they are going to worry. It's a very, very high likelihood. And so one of the quickest ways to resolve worry is to do something creative. And by creative, I mean anything that's non-repetitious, anything that you're not used to doing. It doesn't have to be poetry or painting or something like that, because we get stimulated from new experiences. And some people need these new experiences more than others. So that's an example of how, suppression of that emotion worry and that staying in that constant vibration. And many people do this, that it creates all types of digestion and stomach issues, bowel issues. There's all types of labels out there for them. And a lot of that, once it gets into the physical body, it can still be helped by releasing the emotions, and that's emotional processing. And that changes your energetic field, which, all 5 of those fields that I mentioned a little bit earlier, they all work together. The very first step in all of this, though, is to see that spiritual level, the resistance or the energy drain only exists because we think that we know how it should be different than it is. And this is where I like to use our first pillar, that everything's in divine order, whether we understand it or not. And when we don't think that everything is in divine order, or we think that we know the way that it should be, many times that's what creates the friction for these energy drains, which not only continues to suppress, but it makes that area of the body get weaker and weaker over time, and that's where illness or injuries can happen once that it goes through all 4 of those levels and it finally is getting into the physical.
So if we've been taught to suppress, to worry, to think how we want it or how we think it should be is how it should be, which is creating all of this energy leakage that we just covered, isn't the answer to just find ways to charge our energy so we have the energy that could be leaked? Is that one way of doing it?
Well, I mean, that's I'm sure that is one way. Many times people work all during the week for the release of the weekend. So our culture is used to that. I'll pay this cost to get this reward. The path that I like to support and have experienced myself is, let me just get rid of the resistance and not seek all this charging or building of stuff, because I see that if you stop the leakage and then you are developing yourself in a way to where your experiences on a daily basis is building things that you want to build and you want to be part of building, so you don't have to put any energy leakage or focus on the competitors or the people that are trying to do opposite of you out in the world. All you have to do is chop your wood and carry your water. And I like to say, just do the best you can for your team. You don't have to study the other team. You don't have to dissect, try to beat the other team. Just be on your squad. My umbrella here is to help people in their self-development and to help them on their relationship paths, to deepen their intimacy, and then to help people that are in physical pain or have health issues to utilize the 4 other levels outside of the physical to help them to get better and reach optimal wellness. So, see, everything that I do on a daily basis is in some way or somehow supporting that. So that charges me automatically that I've developed a life to where it feeds me to do the things that I need to do to make a living, to continue relationships that I have and that type of thing. So we are going to look at some ways to charge our energy, but I still would like to suggest to continue to focus on where you leak it, where you're around people that start to irritate you or aggravate you, that can lead to anger even, or situations that pull on you monetarily or energetically. Just it's really good for everyone to just be aware of where their energy is going and work to close up the leaks. And then, yes, we're going to get into some ways to also charge all these 5 different levels as well.
And just to be clear, when we talk about energy leakage, we are talking about it on a 5-level system and not just like on the physical. Because when you are being emotional or you've allowed something to cause an emotional reaction, you're leaking energy on the emotional level, and it is trickling down to all the other levels. So they all kind of work hand in hand. If one is out of balance, you're going to feel it no matter if it is the physical or not, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, yes. And they all are put together, connected together. And, it does start with the spiritual, and that begins with doubt. And then it goes into the mental, and that's where the judge sits. Is this right or wrong? And then if it's decided that it's wrong, then is a negative emotion experienced, which weakens the energetic field in the area of the body where that emotion is held. Like I said earlier, the worry is in the abdomen area. And so that normally weakens around the 2nd chakra, the navel, or the 3rd chakra up just under the sternum. And when the energy field gets weakened, then it forms in the actual physical body in the area of that weakness of the field. So that's how they all work together. And so when we're talking about healing or wellness, again, we want to be sure that we're working on all 5 of those to have optimal healing opportunities.
So if we just focus on finding ways that energetically charge us and not look at how to stop the leakages, what does that leave us? What does life look like? I know you mentioned the people who work all week for the weekend. Does that create something like a very high, low, where you're kind of oscillating between extremes? Because I feel like if you focus on looking at just the leakages and working through those and then maybe building up your gratitude practice or something like that, that seems more consistent and more gradual, and it's going to build versus doing the opposite. So I want you to comment on the opposite, but I then also want to just mention or ask you where, because we do get charged on a daily basis by sleep, by nourishment through food. So there are ways that we are constantly being fed. And when we talk about energy recharging or charging, we're talking about things outside of that. So we are being somewhat replenished depending on our habits. But if we're constantly leaking it, then that energy that we're gaining is constantly being lost as fast as we can gain it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, one place to start here is with the opposites. And the reason that it doesn't sustain is that having so-called good experiences that charge people's lives, that make them excited about being alive, see, that takes energy as well. So people that work all week for the weekend to have a good time, many times in their good time, they're exhausting themselves. They're going to sleep late. They might be getting up early. And so they go through their weekend of this fun, and it was exhausting too. So there's a limit. Everybody has their limit to where they're just going to be exhausted. And then it doesn't matter necessarily how many tools you have that will charge your energy field. Like you mentioned a couple, the eating, the sleeping, the rest, that's so important. How we think about things, just laughter, that helps to charge the field. Laughter, for some people, it's dance, movement, music, prayer, gratitude. Right before our podcast, we both spritzed our face with the lavender oil and water mixture that I always have around here, and that is very invigorating to me. So we can go on, salt baths, sound table rides. There's just so many tools, and we'll probably mention more. But the other thing is that the more that you tighten up on your energy leakages, the more you will get out of those so-called things that you like to do to get charged that will replenish you sooner and quicker. So I don't think it has to be just one way. I think that anyone that is focused on stopping the energy leakages, there is this natural, just like we have a natural inclination to eat, we have a natural inclination to need to sleep, and I think we have natural inclinations to charge ourselves in other ways, and some people call it, I just want to have a good time. So another charging thing for me is meditation and stillness, because, see, the energy field can be ran while the body is still. And this is why we're going to get into the full conversation into the 5 different levels and ideas and suggestions of how to charge those 5 levels and how to stop some of the leaks in all 5 of the levels.
So I kind of have this visual that I think represents the 2 ways that we discussed. Maybe if you have a boat, and it's a fairly large boat, but there's holes in it. And so our energy leakage is the water slowly seeping in. And so we can have a bucket where we constantly are picking up the water and throwing it back out, but it's still coming in. And that would be the charging while not paying attention.
Yes, because eventually you'll get tired of shoveling the water. And when it gets to that point, you still just have these holes. So that's why I feel that working on the both simultaneously is optimal, because, again, this is a lifestyle change we're talking about. It's not just a quick fix thing. So it's a gradual process. Again, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
All right, Alexander, looking forward to getting into this more and finding out where I can work on my energy charging.
Absolutely. That's a journey.
Thank you for listening to this free version of the Wise podcast. To hear the complete conversation and go deeper into the application of the tools and techniques of the Just philosophy, head on over to wisewisepodcast.com and become a premium member. You'll get to hear all of our complete conversations, including the complete episodes of our Inward Journey story series and our entire back catalog, and continue your self-development journey with us. We appreciate all of you free listeners tuning in and getting the information on energy leakage and how to charge our energy and all the ways we can do that and all the differences between all the ways. The complete conversation was mostly focused on how to charge your energy on all 5 levels and the importance around that. We did talk about ways we leak our energy that we may not be aware of, the very subtle ways that we do it, and how we need to learn how to be the investigator to be able to find those areas. We talked about how victimhood is a huge energy leak, how the things that initially feed us can eventually turn into things that leak our energy. And this will be mostly around things that feed us to talk about and be passionate about, but there are also things that frustrate us. Like for me, it's the conspiracy stuff. In my past, it's politics. These are things that are very hard for me to talk about nowadays because I can immediately feel that energy suck that happens whenever these topics come up. We talked about how acceptance, forgiveness, and taking action are all very useful in stopping energy leakages. We talked about how worry is detrimental to our health. And then we got into useful actions and perspectives to stop the leakage from it. And an important one that we talked about is how parents tend to worry about the well-being of their children. And we talked about how to manage that. We got into ways to charge all 5 levels at once, which included creativity and also discovering your purpose with your energetic makeup and refining your life's intention with the 3 questions for finding your authentic self. And if you haven't heard that episode yet on the 3 questions for finding your authentic self, we do make all of our essential episodes available in their full form. So you definitely look up that episode. It should be available wherever our podcast is found. We then discussed how doubt and our lack of faith can cause energy leakages. And then we got into the homework for people who want to take the next step. And of course, the sound journey grounding us all out. So if you enjoyed the free version and you want to get in on the complete version, you can head over to wisewisepodcast.com and hit the Get Complete button in the upper right-hand corner, and you can join us on the other side. Now, this is not a money grab. This is an exchange of energy for this information, and this is investing in yourself, in your individual growth. This is actually going to change your life if you apply it. If you hear the tools and techniques that we offer and apply it to your life with discipline, with structure, you will see the benefits as you continue to put the energy in. Hey, I'm living proof of this. I'm living proof of this system. I'm telling you that when you apply it to your life and when you wrap your head around how the entire structure is, it's all about energy. There are no hidden curtains here. There's no guru that you have to get past or question to get the answers. This isn't somebody's opinion. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is when people offer you advice, but then they contradict themselves. All of this falls within the system and within how energy is structured on this plane of polarity, on this earth, in this environment that we all live in and exist in. We're taking the principles of energy, and this has all been metaphorically applied to relating and communication. And when you start to break down and utilize these tools and techniques in your everyday life, you can then start to see the energy, and then you can start to unravel and understand and apply it to newer situations and other situations without the podcast. You don't need the podcast once you have a grasp on the entire system that we're offering here. So I realize this isn't flashy. It's not Netflix. You're not getting Disney Plus here, but what you are getting is information compiled in a way that's easy to utilize and understand. We are demystifying the self-development and self-growth process for you. And in exchange for the complete conversations and our past catalog that we've been putting together for over 5 years, we are asking for a monthly energetic exchange, and that is going towards us continuing to expand. Right now, we are looking into moving this podcast into a video podcast, so it won't just be audio. And with that, we have to buy and invest in cameras and software. So we are here and committed to continuing to bring you content around the Just philosophy. So if you are serious, stand in your power, make a commitment to yourself. Who watches Netflix anymore? Take the money out of that, invest it in yourself. Meet us on the complete conversation. Again, go to wisewisepodcast.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you will see a button that says Get Complete. Join us on the other side. And for those of you who are fine continuing to explore and enjoy the free episodes, if you'd be kind enough to find us on iTunes, Amazon, and or Spotify, and leave us a review and a rating so you can help us get higher up on the algorithms and attract more like-minded people so that we can continue to grow this community, which ultimately benefits you. So thank you so much. We will see you on the next episode. Until then, let's journey. We honor your dedication to self-growth, overall wellness, and continuing to ask the wise whys.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
Continue on your self-growth journey by visiting thejustphilosophy.com, where you are able to connect personally by booking a private consultation with Alexander in person, by phone, or Zoom. Uncover your authentic self more easily with a human design or destiny card consultation. Here you will gain information about your energetic makeup, personality, and your higher self, as well as navigating your way through your relationships. There are also multiple types of reports available for purchase that help you gain insight into your career, relationships, and opportunities for self-growth. The site also allows you to view a calendar of Alexander's live performances and class schedule, peruse other products such as shirts, CDs, and finally, the revolutionary VibroTune vibrational sound therapy tables. These contoured therapy tables allow you to bathe in a vibrational sonic bath of frequencies, bringing you into alignment on all levels. You will be feeling and hearing calming music synced through vibration and frequency. So again, you can grab all this goodness at thejustphilosophy.com, thejustphilosophy.com. The Just Philosophy, as discussed in this podcast, has been developed by Alexander over the last 25 years in his personal studies, private practice, and professional environment. The information discussed is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant as a replacement for conventional medicine. Just remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We want to thank you for working on you. Keep shining your light and refining your vibe.